Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at an independent role-playing game. Now, this is going to be a bit of a short review, because honestly there's not much to this game, but I know a lot of my viewers have fond memories of the series that it belongs to, so I'm going to cover it anyway. Developed and published by Tin Man Games, Fighting Fantasy Classics was released on Steam on June 5th, 2018. Now, I know it's only barely a role-playing game series, but as I said, a lot of my viewers have fond memories of it, so it's worth covering. In recent years, a few developers have been trying to bring the Fighting Fantasy series to computer in a variety of different formats, some of them far more computer RPG than others. There must be several versions of Warlock of Firetop Mountain out there alone. Tin Man Games especially has put together several standalone versions of past Fighting Fantasy books, essentially presenting the Gamebook reasonably close to the original format, with new art and music and automated dice rolling. A number of these translations are actually pretty good, although it does begin to ask the question of why not unify the Gamebook engine and simply present the different books as modules that can plug right into it. Fighting Fantasy Classics does just that. It's an ostensibly free-to-play game, with one free included gamebook, Bloodbones, in which you can then purchase additional digital books to play. As of this review, there are 7 additional books available for purchase as DLC. Citadel of Chaos, City of Thieves, Death Trap Dungeon, Caverns of the Snow Witch, Island of the Lizard King, The Forest of Doom, and of course, The Warlock of Firetop Mountain. The infrastructure certainly may allow for further titles to be released going forward. Each of the titles is the classic digital gamebook format, which is the bare-bones book-like presentation with text and images, often taken directly from the old books. Inventory management, as well as combat and tests, are all automated, allowing the player to simply click a button to roll the dice. While this means that the books themselves are in the simplest of formats available, lacking the bells and whistles of more game-like presentations that have been produced, certain purists may actually prefer this, and it's certainly reflected in the pricing of each gamebook. The interface is the barest necessary. Text is presented on a page-like format, which you can swipe or click the hotspots on the page in order to change from page to page, and certain choices are presented by buttons. Some buttons may be grayed out or, disabled, as either the player doesn't have what's necessary or certain tasks must be taken beforehand. A common example of this is combat, which actually opens up a separate combat screen that must be resolved before you can proceed. Combat itself is pretty simple, following the rules of the gamebooks. Characters have stamina that represents their health, skill that represents their overall skill and ability, and then luck, which may be used either in combat or non-combat tests. 2 dice are rolled, modified by the character's skill and gear, and then they're compared to the enemies. The winner damages the loser, and then things repeat. Enemies may be either engaged singly, or one at a time if there are multiple enemies. Occasionally you'll see a group of enemies treated as a single entity. Tests are done in a similar manner, simply presenting a die roll icon and then only allowing success or failure link to be followed once the test is complete. During play, an adventure sheet may be accessed, which offers a brief of the character's current stats, gear, currency, and so forth. It actually took me a while to realize this, but you can just drag it up or down to see more or less of the sheet. It is utter simplicity. As for the writing of the gamebooks themselves, I only checked out the included one since I've had a couple versions of the others over the years, but it appears that they're just taken directly from the pre-existing gamebooks, which means that the quality varies quite a bit. Some of them are classics that are highly recommended in whatever format you can get them, while others aren't. These gamebooks do sort of combine the elegant simplicity of old-school RPG diced combat with the sometimes arbitrarily fatal choices of old choose-your-own-adventure style books. Indeed, there's even an option in the difficulty to engage a particular book in that simplified choose-your-own-adventure format, which basically skips combat and tests and just lets you explore the book with only your own choices to drive the story and avoid arbitrary annihilation. The books are functional and provide a decent way to play the games through, although if you're expecting the bells and whistles of more elaborate recent versions, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Not all is well with this release, however. The user interface, as simple as it is a little bit clunky, and I often found myself temporarily aggravated with it, including moving around sheets while doing combat, or skipping text accidentally by clicking a button when I was just trying to turn the page. It's not game-breaking, but it could use a little bit of tweaking. Further, since release, the game has been plagued with technical bugs. Bugs which are slowly beginning to be resolved, but some of them were pretty serious. And it can be problematic considering this is essentially just an automated book. Some of the books that were included but have been fixed, since release at least, should never have made it past even a casual pre-release inspection, and some of them there is absolutely no justification for. It is sadly a sign of poor initial craftsmanship, which I hope will be resolved given enough time and patches, since they are actively working on it. My honest take on Fighting Fantasy Classics is that it is a good way to play a number of the Fighting Fantasy gamebooks in a manner that is reasonably close to the original books. But there are better ways to play through some of the individual entries in the series. The big ones that have been made into full-fledged RPGs all their own throughout the years may appeal more to a general RPG player, while people looking for experience of just one gamebook may be better served with Tin Man Games' prior offerings of the standalone books in this series. However, if you want something close to the original feel without having to fidget with dice or keep scraps of paper handy, this does do a fair job of that, even with the issues that I've already mentioned. And the price per book is not that bad at all. And on that relatively brief note, I'm going to leave it at that. There's honestly not much more to say about this one. This has been the RPG Crawler with Indie Game Friday Fighting Fantasy Classics. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. If you're feeling particularly generous, I do have a Patreon at patreon.com/rpgcrawler that goes towards supporting my reviews, such as my Indie Game Friday series, as well as my general review series and so forth. Until next time, take care and goodbye.